actually seems to be working. Haven't done enough of these to be confident with the tech. Just come on camera for a second here. So welcome one and all. I already have a couple of people in the chat. Nehal from Austin, Texas. Welcome indeed. Christine from Munich. I would love to know, first of all, let's get the basics right. Can you hear me? So I'm gonna, can you hear me okay? Which is probably not the best grammar ever. So that's if I can get the sound working and the video looks like it's just about working, then we are good. Tom coming in from Chicago, welcome indeed. I just so that you know that we're keeping up the usual practices and traditions. I'm armed here with my British standard cup of tea, even though it's rather late in the day to be drinking tea. Great, everyone says they can hear me, and everyone is quite a lot of people. I said right at the beginning that I haven't done a huge number of live streams, and this one is a first in a very important way, because I think every time I've been live so far, I've snuck on, almost hoping that no one would come along. Today was the first one when I invited rather more people, and very delighted to see that people have turned up. So many that I'm going to struggle to name check you all, which is awesome. Who do we have then? We have everyone saying that you can hear me, which is great. Who have we got? With Jeffrey from New Jersey, Nicola in Dublin. Many people. Fantastic. Thank you very much for coming. So I can't. It's really difficult at the moment to talk about anything before we talk about the thing that's happening. I think we've pretty much all been affected by this in one way or another. So the coronavirus, COVID-19. So I guess I have to say before we go any further, I hope you guys are okay. Hope you and yours are well. And I think today in the UK, we have now been locked down for something like 30, I think we're on day 37. I must say, kind of, and touch wood here, for me, for my family, I think we've been extremely lucky. We've been able to be all together. We've been able to avoid getting sick in any way. So far for us, so good. I'm actually starting to think I'm gonna miss it, because there's parts of it that I really quite like. So I wonder how you guys have been coping. Some of you I know, I'm seeing people. Andreas coming in from Denmark. C. Harris, is that Charis or C. Harris? It's probably C. Harris. From Connecticut. Now Jill from Cape Town. I haven't really heard what's happening in South Africa, COVID-wise. Yes, it has been interesting, to say the very, very least. One thing that always catches me by surprise, and it shouldn't, because I have done this a few times now. There is something of a delay between me saying something and you being able to hear it and then write back in the chat. I always forget that I have to fill a little while to allow you to catch up. I will get into some content very shortly, and I hope that we will be done and dusted within the hour. I will be stopping and kind of asking you questions from time to time, but it would be great if we can get in and out in an hour, because I'm looking forward to the other tradition. My first tradition is a British standard cup of tea. The second tradition is the cold one that's waiting for me at the end. So what have we got? We have Steve coming in from Toronto, Canada. Oh, Keith from Brooklyn. Laura from New York City. My goodness, we've heard lots about New York City on the news. Teo from Calgary. I must have been in Calgary at this time of year several years ago, because I think it's just about the time for the Calgary Stampede, and I think I heard that that's been cancelled this year, which is a terrible shame. All right, now let's see if I can get this. Let's see if I can get this here presentation rolling. Is that going to be this? Oh, look. All right. Oh, look. Yeah, I didn't see that coming. I'm not in the frame anymore when I do that. So just so that I know who I am talking. Oh, this is ridiculous. Okay, I'm moving over. I should have noticed that when I was preparing. So just so I know who is on listening right now, watching right now. In your current Agile team, are you doing Scrum? Are you doing Kanban? Are you doing perhaps Scrumban, or are you doing something else? If to make the typing easier, an S will do for Scrum, a K will do for Kanban, an SB will do for Scrumban. Or if you're doing anything other than that, let me know. So yeah, type away in those comments. I'll have a little bit of tea while I wait for the delay to catch up. Talk about that. Okay. So looking down the list here. Sambo78 coming in from Brighton. Hello, Brighton. Weather's been terrible the last couple of days. Mike from Vancouver. Love Vancouver. Great. Abdu13. Hello from Paris. Hi, Paris. People from all over the world. That's absolutely amazing. Fantastic. Okay, so the answers are coming in on frameworks. We've got, Michael Forney. Hello there. Long time no see, man. Good to see you. So you're doing Scrum. We have Matt doing Scrumban. Melba doing Scrumban. Okay, more Scrumban than I would have guessed. Michael Strong doing Scrum and Kanban, but not Scrumban. Scrum, SSS for Scrum. David, Michelle doing Scrumban. Paula, Kanban. So this absolutely what I would expect from this group. Mostly Scrum. A little bit of, actually, my goodness, I'm seeing more Scrumban here than I would have expected. Interesting. Mike's doing, where was that? Yeah, Mike Collins, Scrum with a bit of BDD, behavior-driven development for good measure. Excellent, I do approve. Simon with Kanban, okay. And a couple of you doing Scrum and Kanban. Okay, yeah, and then more. So yeah, I wish I could do some kind of, I probably should have set up some kind of poll here, but it looks like we're kind of at 70% Scrum with the remainder split between Kanban and Scrumban. Excellent, okay, good to know. I have another question for you. How did that work? Oh yeah, so this one's interesting, possibly. So a slightly controversial question, and yeah, I should probably say I shouldn't say anything. So my question is Scrumban, and so if I suppose I can put it this way: if Scrum is an agile framework, if Kanban is an agile framework, is Scrumban an agile framework, in your opinion? Again, British Standard cup of tea, while I wait for some responses to come in. Ah, okay. Excellent. Just what I was hoping for, a difference of opinion. Yes, it is. No, it isn't. More, I have to say, more yeses than nos. Should be. Yes, yes, yes. No, no. We're very I think I'm taking that as a very, very definite no. Christine Partley. We have a politician on the line. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Sure. So yeah, between it would definitely have made a nice one of those. I don't even know what they're called, but where you kind of can select a percentage. It would have been interesting to see where that one would fall. Okay. I am gonna touch on that in a little while. Um, and yeah, and kind of spoiler alert. I think you can make an argument for both answers. So it's not. I'm not here to disabuse you of that position. Okay. Let me see if I can go into a different screen. Yeah. Oh, that's out of date. Let's move this along. So. Okay. Yeah. Well, that's not exactly where I wanted to start. Actually, I'm going to come straight back onto. I'm going to come back onto main screen for just a while. So, I. It's interesting because this does tie us being here today does tie in to a certain degree with being in lockdown. Just about a year ago, I think we're very close now, aren't we, to Star Wars Day? So Star Wars Day, I think, is Monday, 4th of, July the 4th. You know that. And I think that was the day that I launched a course that I hadn't actually built yet. So it was a thing called the Scrumban Blueprint. So yes, relevant to what we're talking about today. And it was a course that was delivered live. So every 2 weeks, we'd get on a call, a little bit like this, and I'd kind of deliver a lesson, and then people would go off and try things out. What we covered in the lesson, and then 2 weeks later, we'd get back together to see how people had got on, and then do a little bit of teaching, and off they would go again. All based, with a structure very much like, very very much like the cheat sheet that we're here to talk about today. Now, my intention at the time was that we'd deliver this thing over a period of weeks, and then I would set about rebuilding it. So rather and create something that was more conventionally like a course. So instead of it being delivered live, it would be a series of structured lessons, and that certainly was the plan. However, it got, the year went on. We got to the end of the year, and other things kind of somehow got in the way. And it was really only when I saw that, oh my goodness, we're getting close to May now. So this is probably something like 6 weeks ago. I started to think, okay, I need to sit down and get on with this. It's time for the next iteration of the Scrumban Blueprint. And I kind of started to do that when we went into lockdown. And when lockdown happened, what was that, 4, 5 weeks? Yeah, something like this, 5 weeks and a day ago. That was kind of, I took that as my starting point. So this kind of sucks in so many ways, but the one thing it gives me is time, and it's almost the is there a phrase something along the lines of it's the constraints that set you free? Because I have found the constraint of being in lockdown for a period of time um, extreme, extremely freeing in a couple of ways. I've done a lot more work on Scrumban than I would have done otherwise, and I think I've been on my bike every day but one of lockdown. Somehow for me, the message that we are allowed to go out once per day to exercise, and somehow in my head that got translated as you must exercise once per day. I'm a person who normally exercises several times per annum. So the fact that I've done something like 1,000 kilometers on my mountain bike, amazing. Anyway, we're not here to talk about that. So yes, long story short, when I'm asked what did you do during COVID-19, the lockdown, what I did was I sat in this room and I wrote and recorded, and it's pretty well there now, actually. I have a few videos to do at the beginning, a few videos at the end, but that thing is just about ready. One of the things I intentionally left till the very end, till the beginning of this week, was to update the blueprint itself, which of course is why I've asked you here today. So I think it's about time we took a look at it. Yeah, let's see if I can get that presentation back on screen here. So yeah, a little bit of expectation management. Oh, Mike, I hope. Oh, hold on. Oh no, I've done something terrible. Let's go back here. Oh, I managed to lose my presentation. Sorry, guys. Talk among yourselves. I've pushed a button here. I had a presentation. I managed to lose it. See if I can get it back again. Where the heck would that have been? Somewhere on this page, I'm sure there is a presentation. Hold on, let's see if I can. Just give me a second. Wow, this is good. Let's see if I can drag something back on screen. Oh, I think I might have rescued it. Yes, okay. So for Mike, who said, please get on with it already, we're getting on with it, and we're getting on with it right now. It is a new version, but just to manage your expectations, definitely evolution rather than revolution. So let's have a look. So this is the one. If you have a version of the cheat sheet, there have been several versions that look similar to this, but that's kind of the old, and this one is the new. So I'm gonna, between those two pictures, you can't really tell what's going on. So I am going to step through the key differences and the rationale for those differences. The first difference is pretty fundamental, actually, and relates to the question that I just asked you. The current version of the cheat sheet is called the Scrum to Scrumban blueprint. Cheat sheet, rather. Cheat sheet. The new version is just called the Scrumban cheat sheet. And my reasoning for that is, and as I said, relates to the question that I just asked you. One way to look at Scrumban is that it is a framework, that was the question I asked. So we can look at it as if it's a framework that sits somewhere between Scrum and Kanban. And okay, and yeah, and that, as I said, as I hope I said before, that is valid. But another way to look at Scrumban, and this is the way I tend to look at it, is that it is a pathway that starts at Scrum and ends at Kanban. Now, the reason, so yeah, actually two things to say about that. The first thing is that the guy who wrote the book Scrumban, I'm pretty sure that was his intent. He was, I'll just come back on screen to talk about him a little bit. So yeah, where is the guy? I've lost my copy of the. So this is the book Scrumban. My little notes inside of it, and this is. It's not going to work very well, is it? But oh, put him in the dark. So that's Corey Ladas. He was really a Kanban guy, but he was working at a time where all of the noise was happening in the Scrum arena. So this book, I think anyway, I don't know if your interpretation would be different. This takes aim at Scrum and says, I think there are things in Scrum that you could do differently that would really help you out. And it was kind of like a step-by-step approach, starting at Scrum, actually staying with Scrum quite a lot. We'll talk about that in a second as well. But quite a lot of the way, and then at the end going, actually, you might as well stop doing Scrum altogether. So yeah, so let's go back to that presentation picture. So that's how I prefer to describe Scrumban, as that pathway. I suppose one of the things that muddies the water a little bit is that although Scrum is pretty well defined as an agile framework, Kanban is much less so. You know, for Scrum, we do have the Scrum guide, and we don't really have an equivalent for Kanban. So it is valid, I think, to say that you could actually, I didn't do a third picture, but you could make an argument for a picture that starts at Scrum and goes over and ends at a thing called Scrumban. You could definitely argue that. But for the new version of the cheat sheet, I've just called it the Scrumban blueprint. All right. Another change I've made, and this one's not, it's one of those changes that I agonized about, and it may not be relevant, so I'm just going to talk about it very briefly. One of the things that's nice to do in any kind of, especially in this, or maybe only for a staged cheat sheet like this, is that it's nice to start with a couple of steps that are relatively easy to do. So it adds a little bit of momentum. People feel like they've made some progress, and indeed they have. So what I found out, and actually I might as well ask you guys right now, is that most teams were not early binding anyway. So this was a nice and easy, one reason anyway, was that this was a nice and easy place, an easy step. So I moved it not to the first position, but the second position. So I wonder, so that's my question to you, do you practice early binding? What I mean by early binding is the assignment of work to a person at a time before the point where the work is picked up. So that might be during backlog refinement, or it might be during sprint planning. So do you do that, is my question. And while I'm waiting for your answer, I'll be taking a swig from the British Standard cup of tea. Oh, I should also say thank you very much for the thumbs up. Very, very much appreciated. Thanks for that. Oh, I'm seeing an interesting. There was a good. I missed when it was happening. There was a good discussion about daily stand-up. Oh, that's. I'd love to do. Maybe we should do another session on daily stand-up. I'd love to talk more about that. So Eric has no early binding at all. Excellent. Don says no. What was the question again? Does your team assign? So I guess the opposite of late binding would be you go to the board, you pick up a ticket to work on it, and now that ticket is yours. You've assigned yourself to it. That's late binding. So you're binding. The person is assigned to the work, or the work is assigned to the person at the last possible moment, rather than early binding, which is when perhaps you're actually writing the card and say, okay, this card is to do X, Y, and Z, and Gary's going to be doing it, and that goes straight onto the card really early on in the process. That's early binding. Yeah. Oh, SpongeBob. Welcome, SpongeBob. Excellent to see you. Okay. And Stuart says, yes, it depends. In some cases, there'll be one person with a particular skill. Yeah, I get that. Yeah, that's possibly one good reason to do early binding sometimes. Hanging Garden said, I should have put that question on the slide. I really should have put the question on the slide. Yeah. Murnal says the team does that during planning, so that would be early binding. Ken says early binding. Hanging Garden says late binding mostly. All right, okay, good to know. All right, let's kick this on. So in terms of changes to the stages, as I said before, stage one, it's always good if a stage one is super easy, but I've made it slightly less easy. My rationale was that I think when the first version of this, the first version of the cheat sheet is well over a year old, and I thought at the time a big enough first step was just to get a board. And again, I thought that most people would already have a board, and that would be fine. But now I actually want people to go a stage further. If you don't have a board, get a board. And secondly, and this is the slightly more difficult thing to do, is make the board reflect what the team actually does, the way the team actually works. And this change might actually be contentious, because that one of the criticisms that is leveled at this, when I ask people to go from a board, a typical Scrum board is I guess we say it would be to do, doing, and done, or to do, in progress, and done. So everything is in a single column, and you'd think that would encourage you. It would be logical to conclude that encourages collaboration, whereas splitting that into, for example, as I've done here, design, dev, and test, perhaps that would kind of drive a wedge between various functions, and be the opposite really of what we're trying to do, to have people work together. What actually happens is the opposite of that, but that's pretty difficult for people to see at stage one. Anyway, so that's a relatively minor change. Again, assuming that most people have a board, then the work to do here is to divide the board into columns that reflect how the team is currently working. All right, let's move on. Number 2, we talked at length about early binding, so straight on to the next step, which is impose work in progress limits. this one is the same as before. So that was here is the beginnings of us applying Kanban principles to Scrum. And just to be clear, there's nothing in Scrum that says we cannot do that. Perfectly 100%, as I like to say, 100% Scrum Guide compliant. Here is a stage that has changed more. I had a stage. My previous stage 3 was add more columns, which must be the worst named stage in the history of cheat sheets. So the stage is now described as swap push for pull. And to say a little bit more about what I mean by that, I'm gonna show you this board. So I wonder how many of you are familiar with the concept of a buffer column. So the done columns, the ones colored in gray in the center here, so design done and dev done. Oh, sorry, I was struck by silence. Is it Nihal, is this? Just seen a comment from Nihal saying that Corey Ladas's book is available free on Kindle. I was certainly not aware of that. Because I've been having trouble getting this book to people on Kindle. And that might not be... my experience of Kindle was that it was... there are various rules around the world around who can get certain... what books are available where around the world. Yeah, I got burned on that particular problem. Oh, SpongeBob, I have seen your question and I will answer it. That's actually coming up. So SpongeBob was asking about where we kind of transition between Scrum. If we start, there's kind of an assumption here. I should have made this clear. There's kind of an assumption in the blueprint that we're starting from Scrum, and we're adding in stage by stage elements essentially of Kanban, while for most of the cheat sheet, staying 100% Scrum compliant. But I do have a slide that shows us exactly where we transition from one thing, where we kind of break away from Scrum essentially. So yeah, that is coming up. All right. Okay, excellent. So yeah, so one of the things the buffer column does for you, well, it's a little bit of a double-edged sword. The buffer columns add more work in progress, a tiny bit more work in progress to the system. In general, more work in progress is a bad thing. However, what the buffer columns allow is for each process to be able to pull from the one before. And one of the things a process needs, taking test for example, before pulling, test needs to know that something is ready to pull. So the done column is a very strong visual indication that a particular ticket is ready to be pulled in to the next process. So test can pull from dev can pull from design done, and design being the first process, well, it was always in a position to pull from to do, which, given that we're doing Scrum, is the sprint backlog. All right, moving on to stage 5. Stage 5 hasn't really changed, and again, nothing in Scrum says we can't do this. And some of you may be doing this anyway. Instead of having a kind of an amorphous sprint backlog, my guess is there are things in your sprint backlog that are more important than others, and you kind of drag them towards the top. In Scrumban, we make that very explicit, and we say, and we do it by creating a brand new column on the board, and we limit the size of that. So we are not ordering the entire sprint backlog. We're saying at any one time we'll just have a couple that we decide today are the most important and should be picked up next. A recurring theme, and this is where we start to layer on, if that's the right word, because we're mostly taking away some principles that come from Lean, that we do the minimum at each stage. We try and do the minimum amount of work. We leave things to the last minute. This is really a just-in-time kind of approach. So we don't order the entire sprint backlog. In Lean, that would be considered a waste. So we take a small portion of it and we order that. All right, I'll move on because that one hasn't really changed. And then 6. So 6 also hasn't really changed. But what I have done to it is added this big question that answers, I hope, well, at least tries to answer SpongeBob's question. And I think I've got an expanded version of it here. So stages 1 to 5 of the cheat sheet are, as far as I know, and perhaps you've spotted a chink in my armor, but as far as I know, they are 100% Scrum Guide compliant. So you can do all of the stages from 1 to 5, the visualizing, the stopping the early binding, the imposing whip limits, the swapping push for pull, the ordering of a small portion of the backlog, the sprint backlog. All of those things fall within Scrum, certainly, and also within the Scrum Guide. Now, and I'll come back on screen to talk about this. So, I think, so I have gone around the houses on this particular stage. So, I guess my first thought was, if you can't estimate, then how can you choose the right quantity of work for a particular sprint? So I looked at stop estimating and I thought, no, that's definitely not Scrum compliant. No, this is the stage that breaks Scrum. But when we ran the course last year, the Scrumban Blueprint course, that we had that discussion again, and a couple of people thought that they actually could select do a reasonable job of selecting a sprint backlog, and therefore they could do this stage, they could stop estimating, and yet still be doing Scrum. Okay. By the way, the people who were arguing for that were people who were already getting good at something else we should definitely talk about at some point, which is story slicing. So getting really good at making sure that they avoid stories that are this big and, try and keep them to be small, as a general guideline, things that would take no more than a day or two to get all the way through from being picked up to live, or at least ready for release. Now, I'm harping on this a little bit because I think that Corey thought, in his book, I think he thought that this The stages are mine, by the way. The cheat sheet stages, the numbered stages, they are mine. They're my interpretation of Corey's work. Corey Ladas, the author of Scrumban. He thought that you could do Scrum and not estimate. However, dates become important. This book came out before the Scrum Guide was published. So from Corey's point of view, doing all of the things we've talked about and stopping estimating, well, all of the main points of Scrum were still there. You were still doing sprint planning. You were still doing a daily stand-up, a daily Scrum. You're still doing a retrospective. You're still doing a sprint review, etc., etc., etc. So for him, he would have said this was at least Scrum compliant. But now that we have the Scrum Guide, now that we have additional concepts like the sprint, what is it? The sprint goal. Sorry, yes, the sprint goal. That I think it's pretty hard to argue that we are now 100. So I guess the position I'm at right now. Let's go back to this. Is that somewhere anyway, let's say this, somewhere during the stage of stopping estimating, we're probably pushing the boundaries of what can still be considered Scrum. Yeah, let's say that. All right, let's move on. And then the final step, or the final stage on the cheat sheet, is to trigger planning. So it can be said that the action of building a sprint backlog is kind of a periodic push. So a push into our system that is triggered by the calendar. What this stage does is flip that into a pull that is triggered by the work itself. And I wish I don't think I had a big version. I should have had a bigger version of this to show you. This line is a reorder point. And the idea is when the to-do column drops below this line, then that is the chance, that is the trigger for you to arrange a planning meeting. And by the way, it's no longer a sprint planning meeting, because now that the work is triggering the meeting, well, we're no longer sprinting in periods of 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks. We've started to move into something that is a good bit more continuous, and this now is definitely not Scrum. We have now crossed over, and we're now either, depending on your point of view here, we're either doing Scrumban or we're doing Kanban. So yeah, SpongeBob, I hope that answers your question. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we're still doing Scrum. Somewhere in 6, we break it, or at least weaken it severely. And then in 7, we've definitely stepped right away. All right then. Yeah. I am going to come back on screen because I want to take a moment. I've learned something. I actually took my drink before I came back on camera, and I usually forget to do that. Maybe I'm getting slightly better at this thing. Just wanted to catch up with the comments. I did see out of the corner of my eye some great discussion going on. Yeah. Oh, guys, you're answering each other's questions. There's kind of nothing for me to do here. This is awesome. Great. Fantastic to see all of that. Okay, now. I think I said I went on at boring length about what I've been doing during lockdown. What I haven't done yet is one of the things that's kind of gone a little bit down my to-do list because of concentrating on building up um, the Scrumban course, filming the new version of the course, is that I had intended by now to do a Scrumban episode. And by the way, you guys have just helped me, because I'm gonna be analyzing your comments once we finished here today, and I'm gonna use them because I could. One of the things that's held me up, as well as being just busy, was that I wasn't really sure how to pitch it. I wasn't really sure what kind of Scrumban related episode to create. So hopefully, there's gold dust in them and their comments, and I'll be able to come up with that. The other thing I wanted to say about Scrumban, I wonder how many of you are aware that I have a Scrumban group over on LinkedIn. So is anyone here a member of that group? I did drop a note into the group today. So is anyone joining me here from LinkedIn? I would be very interested to know. I'm always nice to know where people found out about these things. So yes, I think it's the last time I checked, this may have changed. I think it's the only group on Scrumban on LinkedIn. So it should be relatively easy to find. I hope it is. When I figure out how to change the description for this video, I'll add a link in there. Going back to the presentation one more time. So I probably should tell you where to get your hands on this here cheat sheet. There are a couple of ways you can get the cheat sheet, but the easiest way is there is a dedicated Scrumban page on my website. If you scroll right down to the bottom of that page, so developmentthepage.com/Scrumban, scroll all the way to the bottom, you will see a little form there, and that will annoyingly, it will ask you for your name, it will ask you for your email address, and the reason I ask you for those things is, well, actually a couple of reasons. One of these is that I change these cheat sheets relatively frequently. They inevitably have mistakes. I'm lucky enough to get suggestions for improvements fairly often. So these things get updated, and if I have your email address, I can tell you more about that. Well, I can send you a brand new version. On the subject of, SpongeBob has already got it. So yeah, it is, the latest version is 3.0. Excellent. By the way, if you're already on my list, if you're already a proud owner of an earlier version of the Scrumban blueprint, I will be sending an updated copy to you by email. That's probably not going to happen today because, I've got a cold one waiting for me. But I'll make sure to get those sent out tomorrow. Yeah. What else did I want to ask you about? I'm sure there was something else. Come back and screen here. Yeah. So the other reason that I have you part with your valuable email address information is hopefully, so as part of relaunching the new version of the Scrumban blueprint, I am going to be doing a free training all around Scrumban. I really wanted to do it on Star Wars Day. I think that would have been appropriate. I've had some very boring tech issues that I won't bore you with, that have meant I've had to delay things a little bit. One of the things I wanted to do today was come up with a brand new date, but it looks like it's going to be tail end of May into June. As soon as I have a date for that, I'll put it somewhere prominent, I will let you know. But yeah, so look out for that training. The training we did last year in the run up to the very first version went down very, very well indeed. I learned so much from the people who went through the course the first time. Yeah, so it's kind of it's night and day compared to what I knew at this time last year compared to what I know now. So it should be a good bit more valuable, a lot more actionable, hopefully with some examples from real people who have gone through some of this stuff. So yeah, look out for that coming up over the next month or so. Yeah, I'll just go and check in with the comments. Looking at the time here, I think we've done reasonably well on time. So 10 minutes till the hour. When we get to the top of the hour, then I'm off on my cold one, all right? So we have 10 minutes, so I'm going to check in with your questions. I'm still seeing comments on late binding or early binding. Good to know. I'm glad. So a couple of you have grabbed the latest. Yeah. Yeah, interesting. So Nihal mentioning the age-old problem of estimation and keeping stakeholders happy and on side. Yeah, very interesting. One of my I have kind of subjects that let's say interest me. You know, it's kind of my thing. One of my things is estimating my hatred of estimating. As some of you will know, I built another course last year that was all around estimating, mainly around why estimating was a bad thing. But let's not go there because I could really go there, but this would become a very long session indeed. So yeah, but yeah, it's a very good point. How do you it's one of the constant challenges we have, isn't it? We are working in an agile world, by definition unpredictable, and yet we are called upon to predict the future. It's always going to be difficult. It's almost like an unstoppable force and an immovable object coming together. A very difficult square to a circle to square, square to circle, whatever people say. So yeah, so I guess those were definitely grab a copy of the cheat sheet. Oh yeah, almost the most important thing. And tell me what you think of it. Tell me how you think it can be improved. I said that before. The reason I want your email address is to be able to send you new versions of it. I'm particularly bad, I realize. I like doing the pictures. So the graphics for me are the easy bit. I'm particularly bad when it comes to writing text for things. So if you can help me out with the labeling of this, some of the explanations, the explanatory notes, anything like that, anything that you think would make it clearer, love to hear from you. Anything you think is plain wrong, please let me know. I do keep I try not to update them every other week because that would just be annoying for people, but I do have a system for kind of keeping all of the suggestions, and from time to time I put them together. And of course, as you know, for Scrumban, it's very much top of mind for me at the moment. So you would be massively helping me if you spot anything in that can be improved. Very much like to hear from you. Would love to see you over in the Scrumban group. The Scrumban group was absolutely an experiment that I had no expectations. Somehow we've got well over 1,000 members of that group now, which is mind-blowing. Yeah, absolutely crazy. So love to have you there as well. And yeah, look out for, I think I've ended up with more to-dos than you at the end of this. I certainly owe you a proper episode on Scrumban. So definitely got to double down and get that sorted. and also look out for a proper full training on Scrumban in about a month from now. Great. So yeah, we're 5 minutes from the end. Joan says she's downloaded 3.0. Excellent. Gabrielle says he's planning to migrate from Scrum to Scrumban. Yeah, and just to underline and remind you of what's the question that SpongeBob asked. You can do many of these stages, certainly the first 5 and maybe a little bit of 6, and stay doing Scrum. Get the benefit from these various Kanban principles that are layered on to Scrum. Get the benefit of those while remaining 100% Scrum compliant. Oh, I should share the URL. Of course I should. Hold on. I've just figured out I can drop it into the chat. So into the chat it goes. Hope that's coming through on your side. Oh, there we go. Don't know if it's probably not clickable on the screen. In the chat it is. It should. I hope it is clickable. When you get to that page, there's a lot of actually the page is worth a scan as well. Lots of Scrumban related resources, but right down to the bottom there's a form. Fill in the form. Let me know your email address, your first name, and that will send you an email. Follow the link in the email, and the cheat sheet is all yours. It is. I wanted to say super high quality. It's not necessarily of high quality, but it certainly is of high resolution. So you could print it out if you have a printer that handles it. It should print fairly big. Certainly that kind of size. So yeah, I'd love to hear that you printed it out and stuck it on the wall where everyone could see it. Let's have a look. See. Excellent. Well, I am absolutely delighted that so many people came. Thank you very much for coming. 44 thumbs up. That's absolutely fantastic. Love it. 3 of those, or at least 3 of them, happened before we even started. So that's brilliant. Yeah. Fantastic. So what we got? We got 2 minutes to go. Let's have a look. Any final questions that I can see coming in there? Eric says it was a pleasure to listen to me. Eric, you are my new favorite person. Thank you very much. That's a lovely, lovely, lovely comment. Oh, and Eric has Eric says stay safe and well, and of course that's my wish for all of you as well. This has been a unique. I mean, someone pointed that out. Someone mentioned this the other day, and it really kind of struck me that this we'll always be talking about this. This will always be something, that happened in our lives that, they're kind of a thing to tell your grandchildren about. Stunning series of events. Amazing. So please do stay safe. Hopefully some of you are. In the UK, they're beginning to talk about allowing us to, to be less locked down than we are. It's starting to move very, very slowly. Of course, there's always a danger, a concern that we go too soon. So anyway, of course, the message is please, guys, stay safe. So with that said, and with the clock ticking around to the hour, thank you once again for coming. There's a cold one waiting for me. For those of you who drink that kind of stuff, perhaps we should all raise a glass in each other's general direction. Non-alcoholic versions, of course, are available. Brilliant. SpongeBob, thank you very much for your comment. That's lovely of you to say so. Thank you. All right, guys, we're done here. Thanks again for coming. Really, really appreciate it. Grab the cheat sheet. Join in on the Scrumban group on LinkedIn, and look out for more Scrumban related goodness coming your way shortly. Brilliant. Surfing Cook, thank you for your comment. Cheers for now. All right, guys, we're hanging it up. The big, oh yeah, do you get this with your Zoom calls? The bit at the end where people don't really know where the button is. I'm going to be doing that now, jabbing around the screen. Islands of Innovation says got the cheat sheet in your inbox. Great. Of course, as always, check spam folders if you don't see that email coming through. Roberta says thanks from Sweden. Looking forward to more videos. Yeah, Louis said thanks. Steve says thanks. Very helpful as always. I'm really pleased you guys got something out of this. Really enjoyed it. Okay, my cold one's waiting. I'm off. Time to stab those buttons. Oh, I think I found it. Here we go.